The secret to mastering life isn't in words, but in silence and laser focus. Are you ready to unlock it? Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into something you probably don't talk about at brunch or text your cousin about after yoga class, but you feel it every single day. That constant noise in your head, the one that hums between the moments of silence, that whispers doubts when you're trying to rest, that shouts over you just as you're trying to breathe. It's exhausting, isn't it? You haven't run a marathon, yet your brain feels like it's been sprinting since 4 a.m. for no particular reason. And don't even get me started on the thought spirals. You go from I need to reply to that email to what if everyone secretly hates me in about 12 seconds. You're not alone. But honestly, if you don't learn to shut some of this down, you won't survive the group chat, let alone life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I bet it's later than you think. Now, calm down, turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's begin today's journey of listening and healing together. You start to notice the noise when you wake up in the morning. It's not the lawnmower outside or the neighbor's yappy dog, it's the monologue running in your head. Things to do, things you forgot, things you should have said, and things you'll probably never get around to. You pour your coffee and sit down, but your mind is already pacing like it has somewhere better to be. You're not thinking clearly, you're just reacting. It's as if your thoughts are junk mail, endless, cluttered, mostly irrelevant, but somehow hard to ignore. And here's the kicker. This mental noise feels productive, like you're solving something, like worrying is some kind of strategy. But science disagrees. Psychologists call it cognitive overload, when your brain tries to process too much information at once. Your decision-making actually gets worse. You're less rational, less present, more prone to burnout. Your brain wasn't built for constant multitasking. It's not a browser with 57 tabs open. It's a fragile, beautiful thing that needs rest. And some of you are treating it like a gas station bathroom, underlit and overused. Here's a strange truth you might not know. Our brains are naturally more active when we're doing nothing. It's called the default mode network. And neuroscientists discovered that when you're not focused on a specific task, your brain wanders, usually into thoughts of the past or future. Guess what lives in those places? Guilt and anxiety. Congrats. You've just looped yourself into a private hell. And no, more stimulation doesn't help. It just makes the noise louder. That's why Stoic thinkers, people like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius, advocated for deliberate stillness. Because when you stop filling every silence with thoughts, when you stop narrating every detail of your life like it's a podcast episode no one asked for, something beautiful happens. You start noticing again. You feel the warmth of the mug in your hand instead of just drinking the coffee. You see the shape of the tree outside your window instead of checking if someone liked your post. And somewhere in that quiet, you find a small but undeniable truth. You don't need to think so much. Here's a gentle tip. Set a 5-minute timer. Just 5. Sit, close your eyes, breathe in slowly through your nose. Exhale even slower. Every time a thought tries to hijack your attention, treat it like a notification, swipe it away. Don't judge it. Don't chase it. Just clear it. At first, it'll feel impossible. You'll get itchy. You'll remember weird things like where you left that old IKEA manual from 2016. That's normal. That's the noise fighting for space, but you stay. Because the real strength doesn't come from wrestling every thought into silence. It comes from knowing you don't have to entertain all of them. Some experts still debate whether mindfulness is truly the solution for mental overload. But one thing's for sure, the cost of not slowing down is already visible: chronic stress, memory loss, even cardiovascular issues. And no, thinking less doesn't mean being less intelligent. It means being intentional. Your mind is like a garden. You can either prune it or let it become a jungle where your peace gets lost and eaten alive by overthinking. You're not here to be a machine. You're here to be a human being, one that listens, notices, and breathes. So today, try one thing. Don't react to every thought. Don't answer every mental knock at your door. Some visitors just want to mess up the place. Now keep that fan going. The noise is finally starting to settle. You ready for what comes next? You think you're staying informed, connected, efficient. But deep down, you know the truth. You're terrified of being left behind. That's why you check your phone the second you wake up. That's why you open Instagram while waiting for the microwave. That's why even while watching this, you've probably toggled over to another tab, just to make sure you're not missing anything. But let me ask you, when's the last time any of those things you kept up with actually gave you peace? You scroll because you're afraid the world is moving on without you. That if you don't keep talking, thinking, reacting, you'll fade out like one of those Facebook friends you haven't seen in 10 years, but still like their vacation photos out of politeness. And sure, the fear makes sense. We live in a culture where your value feels tied to how fast you respond, how much you post, how plugged in you are. It's like life became one big group chat, and if you don't contribute constantly, you get ghosted by existence itself. But here's a mind bender. The more you chase staying relevant, the more irrelevant you actually feel. Because you're not living anymore, you're just monitoring. And that monitoring, it comes at a price. According to behavioral psychologist Dr. Gloria Mark, the average person switches tasks every 47 seconds. That includes checking your email in the middle of writing a sentence or watching 2 YouTube videos at once just to save time. Spoiler, you're not saving time. You're fragmenting your brain. And with every swipe, click, and just one quick look, you're reinforcing a deep belief that you are only safe when you are busy. But busyness is not safety. It's just noise in a fancy outfit. Let's take a little walk through a weird study. In 2014, researchers at the University of Virginia found something disturbing when asked to sit alone in a room for 15 minutes without any distractions. 67% of men and 25% of women chose to give themselves mild electric shocks rather than just be alone with their thoughts. Let me repeat that. People would rather electrocute themselves than sit quietly for a quarter of an hour. If that doesn't tell you how scared we are of stillness, I don't know what will. And no, you're not crazy. This isn't a you problem. This is baked into the system. Apps are designed to keep you worried you're missing out. Algorithms reward hot takes and speed, not wisdom or reflection. The game is built on your fear of falling behind. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. You're not behind. There is no behind. There is no imaginary race where your worth is determined by how many updates you've consumed. Today, you're a human being, not a news ticker. So here's a gentle practice for tomorrow morning. When you wake up, don't reach for your phone immediately. Just pause. Sit at the edge of your bed. Let your breath settle into your body before you let the world in. Feel your feet on the floor. Listen to the silence before it's broken. You'll feel uncomfortable at first, like you've lost a limb. That's okay. That's just your dopamine receptors screaming like toddlers. Stay with it anyway. Because true strength, the kind Stoics lived and died by, isn't about saying the most, doing the most, reacting the fastest. It's about being the one person in the room who can stay still while everyone else panics. And yes, some experts still argue whether digital detoxes or phone fasts really work long term. But the Stoics weren't trying to hack your screen time, they were trying to remind you of your agency. That you And only you choose what earns your attention. Not the trends, not the panic, not the fear of being forgotten. So maybe tomorrow, you won't post anything. Maybe you won't check every update. Maybe, just maybe, you'll find that the world keeps spinning, and you're still right here. And that quiet, it doesn't mean you're missing something. It means you're finally arriving. You're at lunch with a friend, or at least, that's what it looks like from the outside. But inside, something else is happening. You're not really listening. You're planning your next sentence. You're nodding at their story while quietly preparing yours. You're not in a conversation, you're in a performance. And you don't even know why you're talking so much. Somewhere along the way, silence became suspicious. Like if there's a pause, someone's going to fill it with judgment. So you talk, you explain, you narrate, you crack a joke, you defend your choices before anyone even questions them. You've been conditioned to fill the space, even when the space might be what your soul actually needs. Here's something you probably haven't heard. Most people speak to avoid feeling. Think about it. How many times have you vented just to stop yourself from feeling anxious? How many times have you talked over a hard moment instead of sitting with it? And how often do you catch yourself saying things just to avoid the awkward echo of nothing? There's even a name for it in psychology: compulsive verbalization. It's not about communication, it's about control. We speak so we don't have to sit still with the chaos inside us. And while a few extra words here and there seem harmless, over time, it dulls your ability to hear yourself or anyone else. In fact, according to a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, people who consistently engage in high amounts of speech, especially in emotionally charged situations, actually retain less information and feel less satisfied after conversations. It's like yelling into a canyon, loud but lonely. And here's a strange truth you probably didn't expect. Most people are thinking about what to say next instead of truly listening to you. So what happens when you become the one who listens first? Everything shifts. You start to notice things others miss. The tremble in someone's voice when they say they're fine. The pause before the smile. The way people soften when they realize you're not waiting to speak, you're just there. And as you speak less, you start to hear something else, your inner voice. Not the anxious one, not the one performing or pleasing. The steady one, the one that doesn't need an audience. That's the voice the Stoics were listening for. They believed that strength wasn't in volume, it was in stillness. They spoke only when it added value, not just when it added sound. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to turn things over in your mind or make comments about them. Can you imagine the power in that? The freedom? But don't worry, I'm not telling you to become a mute monk, living in a mountaintop hut sipping snowmelt. You're still allowed to have fun, to laugh, to speak when it matters. The trick is to know when it doesn't. So here's a quiet challenge for your next interaction. Let a silence linger. Let it breathe. Don't fill it just because it's uncomfortable. You'll be tempted. Your brain will do that weird dance where it feeds you 5 useless things to say. But if you wait just a few seconds longer, something else shows up. Real connection, because when you stop talking to defend, distract, or dominate, you leave space for something deeper. And people notice. They feel it. You become different. Mysterious, even. And in this noisy world, mystery is magnetic. Experts still debate how much silence is healthy in conversation. Too much, they say, can feel cold or distant. But the Stoics would likely respond, then maybe people have grown too addicted to noise. So take this with you. You don't have to speak to be understood. You don't have to explain to be accepted. And you don't have to fill every space to be seen. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a noisy room is to say nothing at all. There's this moment you felt it when your brain is buzzing, your mouth's dry, and your to-do list is laughing at you like a high school bully. And you tell yourself, I just need to focus. So you sit down, you open the laptop, you adjust the chair, you make sure your coffee is at the exact temperature that says, I'm a productive adult. And then you check the news, you reply to a text, you rewatch a video about organizing your life. Instead of organizing your life, you're not lazy, you're not broken. You've just forgotten how to focus. We all have. Because we don't live in a world that rewards focus, we live in one that monetizes distraction. And here's the wild thing. The more you chase productivity without attention, the more tired you feel. Not the good kind of tired where you did something meaningful. No, this is that hollow, twitchy tired. The one where your brain feels like a tab you forgot to close 2 days ago. Stoics, those guys in robes who didn't have TikTok, understood something we've forgotten. Focus isn't just about doing one thing. It's about choosing to ignore everything else. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because when you focus deeply, you stop performing. You stop playing the game. You might even seem boring to people addicted to chaos. And that's okay. You don't owe anyone your distraction. Let me tell you something you probably didn't know. Studies show that it takes about 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully return to a task after an interruption, even a quick glance at a notification. So every time you peek at your phone just for a second, you're burning nearly half an hour of quality focus. It's like asking your brain to run a marathon, but making it tie its shoes every 5 minutes. And no, multitasking isn't the answer. That's like trying to play chess while juggling flaming swords. It looks cool in theory, but eventually you just drop everything or light your sanity on fire. Now here's the curveball. You can rebuild your focus, but you have to treat it like a muscle. And right now, most of ours are flabby. Try this tomorrow. Set a timer for 25 minutes. No distractions. Just you and one task. That's it. Not scrolling. Not checking. Just doing. When the timer goes off, take a 5-minute break. Walk. Breathe. Pet your dog. Then do another to 5. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And while some experts debate how universal it is, thousands swear by it because it reteaches your brain what single tasking feels like. And here's the surprise bonus. When you focus, really focus, time stretches. What felt overwhelming becomes doable. What felt blurry sharpens. What felt impossible becomes a quiet rhythm. Remember, the Stoics didn't aim to do everything, they aimed to do the essential things. Well, they weren't productivity addicts. They were clarity seekers, because when you know what truly matters, saying no becomes easier, and silence becomes sacred. So if you're feeling scattered, start small. Turn off one notification. Say no to one unnecessary task. Close one extra tab. And when the panic hits, because it will remind yourself, you're not missing out. You're taking your mind back. Because in a world of open tabs and endless alerts, the most radical thing you can do is focus. You ever notice how people were being busy like a badge of honor? How are you? Oh, just swamped. Crazy busy, as always. Ugh, don't even ask. It's like if you're not overwhelmed, you're not important. But here's the uncomfortable truth you try to dodge. Most of the things keeping you busy are distractions disguised as duty. You spend hours doing things you don't care about for people who won't remember, to prove something you forgot. Why you were proving in the first place. And yet you keep going. Because deep down, there's a fear. If you stop moving, everything might fall apart. Or worse, you might have to sit with the parts of yourself that you've been sprinting away from. But let me tell you something strange and beautiful. True strength begins when you stop needing to constantly do. The Stoics had a word for it, ataraxia, inner stillness. A state where nothing outside you can shake what's rooted inside. And you don't get there by checking off more boxes. You get there by releasing what doesn't serve you. Stillness isn't about doing less to be more productive, it's about doing less to be more human. Now here's the kicker. According to research from Harvard and Stanford, workplace stress, yes, including your non-stop to-do list, is responsible for more deaths per year than diabetes or Alzheimer's. Think about that. Your calendar is killing you slowly, and yet you keep chasing. There's a weird comfort in being busy. Like if you fill every hour, you won't have to ask the scarier questions. What if I'm living someone else's dream? What if I don't actually want what I'm working for? What if I've been afraid to stop? But here's the thing. The moment you stop glorifying busyness, you start reclaiming your life. Do something radical tomorrow. Say no to one thing. Just one. Decline the meeting. Let the dishes sit a little longer. Ignore the email that isn't urgent. Don't vacuum just because you feel guilty. Instead, sit down. Breathe. Stare out the window. Let your mind wander not toward productivity, but toward presence. You'll feel guilt. That creeping sensation like you're wasting time. But you're not. You're detoxing. And like any detox, the first hit of stillness feels like withdrawal. But then something opens. You start noticing the taste of your coffee again. You catch the sound of birds you haven't heard in weeks. You remember what it feels like to breathe without rushing. Some experts argue that doing nothing leads to laziness. But the Stoics would laugh gently and disagree. They didn't mean inaction, they meant intentional inaction. A conscious choice to stop filling every crack of your day with noise. They'd say, don't confuse motion with meaning. So here's a little phrase to repeat to yourself this week. Not everything requires me. Because the moment you realize the world doesn't fall apart when you pause, you begin to understand just how much of it was noise to begin with. And in that pause, that sacred space of non-doing, you don't disappear. You come home. Let me ask you something strange. When was the last time you sat with a thought long enough that it became uncomfortable? Not just a passing worry. Not the kind you silence with a scroll, a snack, or a half-hearted mantra. I mean a real, sticky, stubborn thought. The kind that whispers, are you really happy? Why are you always so tired? Do you even like the person you're pretending to be? Most people don't sit with those. They run. They drown them in noise, in content, in other people's drama, in more plans, more projects, more podcasts. And yet, the Stoics believed that those thoughts, especially the uncomfortable ones, are where your real self begins to speak. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. Here's something weird. Researchers found that when people are left alone with just their thoughts, no phone, no book, no distraction, many of them would rather give themselves electric shocks than sit in silence for 15 minutes. Yes, shocks on purpose. That's how terrifying we've made stillness. That's how allergic we become to our own inner world. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what science is now catching up to. Your thoughts can't destroy you. Your avoidance of them can. Because the more you avoid sitting with them, the louder they'll scream later. In the middle of the night, in the form of anxiety, in the gut punch of burnout, in the slow, dull ache of regret. You think the problem is stress, or lack of time, or your annoying coworker. But often, it's just unprocessed thoughts building up behind a dam of distraction. And when that dam breaks, it doesn't ask for permission. Now here's a strange truth you probably weren't taught. The Stoics didn't meditate to escape, they meditated to confront. They journaled not to vent, but to clarify. They thought on purpose. Marcus Aurelius didn't just rule Rome, he sat down each morning and wrestled with his mind, like it was a wild horse. His journal, not some lofty text, it was therapy, notes. To himself, brutally honest ones. So try this, each night, for just 5 minutes. Write one uncomfortable thought, not to fix it, not to solve it, just to look at it, name it, let it breathe. Say, I see you. That simple act, naming a thought, reduces its emotional weight by up to 50%, according to studies in affect labeling. No therapy bill, just honesty. And here's the bonus. When you face your thoughts, you start to separate from them. You stop being the sad person and become a person feeling sadness. You stop being your fear and become the observer of it. That's Stoic power. The experts still argue whether thoughts can be fully tamed. The Stoics, they didn't care. They just showed up every day to sit, to write, to notice, to think less and think better. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by your own mind, maybe don't add another podcast or motivational reel or self-help checklist. Maybe just sit. Let the thought knock, open the door, and instead of panicking, just say, you can stay a while. I'm listening now, because the monsters in your head, they shrink the moment you offer them a chair. There's this weird thing about silence. At first, it's uncomfortable. Then it gets louder. Then it starts to tell you the truth. But most people never get that far, do they? They panic in the discomfort. They fill it with background noise, TV humming, music always on, podcast after podcast, even in the shower. Especially in the shower. You say it helps you think, but really, it helps you avoid thinking. Because silence, real silence, it doesn't just clear your mind. It shows you what's been hiding underneath all that mental clutter. And here's the twist. You need that silence if you ever want to know who you actually are. See, the Stoics believed something radical, something that would terrify most modern influencers. You don't become wise by speaking more. You become wise by shutting up. They understood that constant talking, verbally or mentally, is often just noise masquerading as insight. That's why Epictetus said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But you've been taught to have a take on everything, to be witty, informed, always ready with a clever response. God forbid you just pause and say, I don't know. That's social suicide now, right? But here's a paradox the Stoics lived by. The more you talk, the less you learn. The more you stay quiet, the more the world speaks to you. And this isn't just philosophy. Neuroscience agrees. A study from the University of Virginia found that participants who embraced regular silence, even short 10-minute intervals, showed improved memory retention, emotional regulation, and stronger decision-making over time. Silence doesn't weaken you. It makes your brain sharper. But most people aren't silent. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. And let's talk about your inner voice for a second. Because that one, that voice loves to fill silence. It says, you should have said this. Why did you do that? They think, you're weird. You're not doing enough. But once you actually sit in stillness, real stillness, something strange happens. That voice gets tired. It loses steam. It slows down. And underneath it, you hear a softer one, a kinder one, the voice that doesn't demand or shame, the one that simply asks, what do you need right now? That voice is you, not the you the world wants, the real you. But you'll never hear it if you're always filling the room. So here's a simple challenge. The next time someone finishes a sentence, wait a full 3 seconds before you respond. That's it. Just 3 seconds of silence. Not awkward. Not weird. Just space. You'll notice something odd. People will lean in. They'll reveal more. They'll start trusting you. Because silence is magnetic. It invites truth. It makes room for things unspoken. Experts might debate whether silence is a tool or a symptom of deeper processing. But the Stoics didn't need the studies. They lived it. They knew that real power doesn't shout. It listens. So the next time you feel the urge to fill the space online, in a room, in your own head, try this instead. Pause, breathe, wait. You might find that in the silence you were avoiding was the wisdom you've been chasing. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes the moment you realize you don't have to respond to everything. Not every comment, not every email, not every sideways glance from your neighbor who thinks your lawn is a little too natural. But that's not how most people live, is it? You've been conditioned to react. Someone posts something, you reply. Someone criticizes you, you defend. Someone praises you, you chase more. It's exhausting. It's noisy. And it's not strength, it's addiction. You think you're being engaged, but really, you're on a leash, tugged around by whatever stimulus barks the loudest. But what if I told you that your real power lies in your pause? The Stoics believed this deeply. They didn't aim to be cold or detached, they aimed to be deliberate, controlled, grounded. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Let that sink in for a second. That email from your boss that ruined your night? That snarky comment that lived rent-free in your head for a week? That political post that hijacked your peace? They only have power when you hand it to them. And here's the sneaky truth most people don't admit. Reacting feels good in the short term. It gives you a hit of righteousness, of being in the game. But over time, it erodes your clarity, your center, your energy, neurologically. Every impulsive reaction reinforces a habit loop. Dopamine hits, cortisol spikes. Identity gets tangled up in responses. But resisting that reaction, that lights up your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for judgment, empathy, and long-term thinking. It literally makes you wiser. And here's the cool part. People notice. They'll ask why you're so calm. Why you don't get dragged into drama. Why you seem unshakable. And your answer, because you stopped trying to win every argument and started choosing your peace instead. Try this. The next time someone says something irritating, don't respond right away. Count backward from 5. Picture the words floating past you like clouds. Breathe once deep and slow. By the time you reach one, you'll see it. Most of it isn't worth your energy. Now, that doesn't mean you become passive. Stoicism isn't about becoming a doormat, it's about becoming a stone floor. Grounded, solid, unmoved by temporary weather. Experts might argue whether emotional regulation is nature or nurture. But the Stoics trained for it like warriors. And you can too. In fact, here's a phrase to keep in your pocket when things heat up. Not everything deserves a piece of me. Not your joy, not your peace, not your Sunday afternoon. Because the more you protect your attention, the more you reclaim your power. And eventually, the world learns that your silence isn't weakness. It's authority. So the next time someone tries to pull you into a battle you didn't ask for, just remember, you're allowed to walk away from the noise, not because you're afraid to fight, but because you finally know what's worth fighting for. Let me paint you a picture. You're sitting in traffic, inching forward, radio humming, coffee getting cold. Someone cuts you off hard. You feel that jolt of anger crawl up your spine. Your jaw tightens. Your hand twitches toward the horn. And in that split second, your mind flashes 100 versions of what you could say, what finger you could raise, what justice you could deliver. But you don't. You breathe. You unclench. and you whisper to yourself, maybe even with a hint of a smile, not worth it. That's not weakness. That's not surrender. That is control. Because true strength isn't about force, it's about restraint. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They didn't measure power by how loud you are, how dominant, how aggressive. They measured it by your ability to remain steady when everything around you spins. And here's something you don't hear often. You don't have to attend every emotional invitation you receive. Someone's angry. Let them be angry. Someone's rude. That's on them. Someone's in chaos. You don't have to dance in their storm. Modern psychology calls this emotional boundaries. The Stoics called it virtue. Because when you respond to chaos with chaos, you become what you claim to hate. But when you respond with calm presence, something magical happens. The energy changes. The situation softens. People notice. You've met those people. The ones who walk into a room and instantly calm the temperature, not by talking, but by simply being still. That could be you. Here's a wild fact. A study from the University of Wisconsin found that individuals who practiced mindful emotional regulation similar to Stoic reflection had increased gray matter in brain regions associated with empathy, decision-making, and emotional resilience. In other words, the more you don't react, the stronger your brain becomes. But let's be honest, it's not easy, especially when you're tired, when someone's being unfair, when your ego is begging for revenge. In those moments, silence doesn't feel noble, it feels like defeat. But the Stoics would say, what you do in those moments defines your inner kingdom. Because your reactions, they're little votes. Every outburst is a vote for chaos, every breath, a vote for peace. And over time, those votes become your character. So try this tiny habit. Whenever something triggers you, place your hand over your chest, not to hold your heart, but to anchor yourself. Feel the warmth, the rhythm, the fact that you're still here, still whole, still okay. Say to yourself, this moment is not in charge of me. The experts might debate the fastest path to mental resilience, but the Stoics weren't in a hurry. They just practiced, quietly, daily, until peace wasn't something they visited. It was where they lived. So next time life throws its little tests, and your blood starts to boil, don't prove you're strong by how loud you can get. Prove it by how deeply you can stay quiet. So now we come to the quietest part of all. The part where there's nothing to prove. No reaction to restrain. No wisdom to recite. Just stillness. And it's in that stillness when your mind finally stops sprinting toward the next thing, that something almost sacred happens. You begin to see clearly, not just the world, but yourself. And for the first time in a long time, you realize you're not broken. You're just distracted. All that rushing, all that noise, it was never you. It was the armor you built to feel safe in a world that praises speed over sanity. But underneath that armor is someone calm, capable, wise in ways you forgot. The Stoics didn't chase perfection. They chased presence. They believed that in the quiet spaces between reaction and response, between impulse and action, there lives something rare: freedom. Freedom from your past. Freedom from your patterns. Freedom from the compulsive need to always do more, be more, say more. And here's the final twist. True strength isn't loud. It's gentle. It doesn't force. It allows. It doesn't demand attention. It commands peace. There's a term in neuroscience called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself with new patterns of thought, new habits, new levels of awareness. And every time you pause, every time you listen instead of speak, every time you choose not to be dragged into the fire, you're rewiring yourself for stillness. You're not just surviving this noisy world, you're reshaping how it affects you. The experts still argue about what kind of inner practices lead to long-term resilience. The Stoics didn't argue. They just practiced, day by day, quietly, in the chaos of empires and markets and war. Just like you, in the chaos of deadlines and bills and traffic. So tonight after this video ends, try something wild. Don't rush to the next thing. Don't scroll. Don't even comment right away. Just sit, breathe, and say softly, I don't need to be anywhere else but here. And maybe tomorrow, you'll notice the world hasn't changed. But you have. Your heart will beat a little slower. Your words will come a little softer. And that twitchy voice in your head, it'll finally start to hush. Because you've remembered what the world hoped you'd forget. True strength begins when you think less, talk less, and focus more. Now close your eyes if you'd like. Let the hum of your fan replace the buzz of your thoughts. Let your shoulders drop. Let silence wrap around you like a warm, weighted blanket. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're just finally still.